ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another Warhirrim Wednesday. My name is Strider, and with me, I have some really cool people here that are gonna help me go through a very interesting article. So, let's start off with we. Hello.
Hello, nice to be here once again.
Thank you for being here. We have Nikki,
Mai Govanen.
our resident elf, and then going to our resident dwarf, Mr. Varking. Hello, sir.
Hello, hello. I appreciate that you went ladies first on this one. I didn't do that on the last one, and I am not a gentleman.
Nah, we just have to balance it out. It's like mix it up a bit. And we have Hen, our local expert on everything behind the scenes and all
Yeah,
stuff.
hi.
For this.
Yeah.
What an intro.
Man of few words, always on point, always keeping it just as enough as is possible.
Yeah.
All right, so the last time we broke some pretty interesting news regarding the postponement of the War of the Rohirrim coming to the theaters. December 13th, 2024. Funnily enough, it's Friday 13th, so maybe it's a hint of things to come in the movie. Yeah,
Right.
but we can touch on that maybe at a later point in the article. There's going to be a cool segue at some point. But yeah, let's start off right away, basically. So we will talk about a Geek Tyrant article that dropped sometime like a month ago. Our friends at theonering.net interviewed Mr. Kamiyama during the NNC Festival, where he spoke about making this movie. And the interesting thing he said is that he first thought that the Lord of the Rings anime would be impossible to make. Then he went on to say that basically how big of a struggle it was to put the world of Middle-earth in animation. He talked about a huge number of horses, how it was hard to put them on screen, because they wanted to really animate them properly, so they would use different kind of tricks. They would film the horses in all of their environment, like in the barn, riding, and so on. And basically, this is the first time Middle-earth is coming to us as animated version like this. We had the movies a few decades ago, but this is presumably going to be on a much higher level, and at least in terms of scale. He also talked about how they use different CGI models. Veta was also included, which is always good news. And different techniques, such as they used mocap. Then he also stressed that they didn't use the rotoscope technique. So maybe we can start off with this technical part. Hen, do you want to maybe tell us something about this motion capture technique and how hard or how easy these techniques are and how that is for translated to the screen?
Yeah, I think everybody knows what motion capture is, where you take an actor on usually a motion capture stage and you put, dots on them, and in moving around, their CGI avatar, if you will, moves in the same way. Really, including really fine movement in the face and stuff. Here, it's not used to embody the characters. My understanding is, it says it. This is not rotoscope. It's an interpretation translation. That is to say, they have sort of actors. I don't think it's the actual cast. It's stand-ins doing some reference motion, and then the animators use that as a reference. I think it's actually less. They use it. Apparently, animating horses is really difficult. Who knew? So I had no idea. So they do motion capture for that, which is what they did in the movie too. Most of the Rohirrim horses you see in the Charge of the Rohirrim, they're motion captured horses.
And those scenes even today look absolutely epic. Like when you think of big horse charge, you have to think of the Return of the King. Or
The benefit of motion capture is that the motion tends to look very believable and smooth. That's the main,
I mean, especially because this is Rohan we're talking about, the land of the horse lords. Nikki, have you had any, or because you are also in animation and in acting, can you tell us maybe like from your angle, how do you see how challenging is this for people to come into the Lord of the Rings movie and trying to put it in an animation form? What's your take on that? On techniques and challenges.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
So techniques and challenges of putting Middle Earth in animation form. What can you say?
I mean, it would be because there are so many different types of animation. Like you have 3D, you have 2D, and now you have anime. The interesting thing about anime is that it's either very cartoonish or it's like the movements have to be quite realistic. And I can see the challenge with the horses because they either are going to look cartoonish or you're going to have to try and copy the way they move authentically, which is why they would choose to use motion capture. The challenge about motion capture is you need, like, obviously I'm assuming they're using someone with really amazing skills when it comes to motion capture, because they also have to do the cleanup afterwards and put the model on and do all of the animation. So there is a lot of post work as well. So it's not always a quicker way, but it is a good way to get the most authentic movements that you can get. And especially nowadays when you have the facial capture, you have the full body capture, and you have the good quality equipment, it is so much easier to do now than it was years ago. But they succeeded in doing it in The Lord of the Rings with Gollum or Smeagol, and they did a good job at that. So thinking about how much further and how quickly this is developing, I think chances are they're going to do an amazing job here. And when it comes to like putting The Lord of the Rings into, and this world, fantasy world, into a cartoonish or drawn state, we've seen the old Lord of the Rings, right? We've all seen it, the classic, the original, back in the day, really old one.
Some of us saw it yesterday.
Yeah,
I like it. I think it's,
I like it too, and it's nice. But now we kind of have come to expect it a more like fantastic, more blurry, closer to the drawings.
A lot more polished, yes.
A lot more polished, and I think that anime is probably the best choice for that. I can't see this in 3D. Like that would, I just couldn't. I don't know why. It would just feel weird.
2D.
But
they say 3D.
Yeah.
It has 3D elements, but it's 2D.
Yeah, it's 2D, but like if you imagine it in full 3D, I don't think that would work. Where we're at the moment, I think it would be somehow it would just feel childish. Whereas anime, they have this chance of making it feel fantastical, like
while still
epic,
remaining serious and like more kind of realistic and gritty.
Yeah, not Robo Chicken.
Yeah, not Robo Chicken, no.
Yeah, and Mr. Kamiyama also went on to say that this is probably the biggest film he worked on. So besides this technical aspect of it, which is we are all hoping, the Lord of the Rings movies, the movie trilogy, specifically Hobbit, in some ways as well, but the Lord of the Rings movie trilogy really pushed the boundaries of animation and of filmmaking at the time.
Computer animation,
but also actually computer animation as well. So we are hoping that the World Ring will also be able to do something similar to that, like push, maybe discover some new techniques or improve the old ones.
Maybe, yeah.
I don't know why, but the anime feel of things, like when you go to fantasy anime, it sort of matches how I see and feel Middle Earth in my heart, more so than say 3, like they do use 3D elements in the films, yes, sure, but like making it into say full 3D or full 2D wouldn't work the same way for me. Like anime is just, yeah, it fits better for me somehow.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see how they will focus here, because this movie is actually not going to have that many supernatural things happening, but we'll get
Yeah,
back to
almost
that a bit
nothing
more later.
really.
Yeah, but the thing about this movie, so let's just maybe go quickly over the plot. So it's summarized by the director here. The movie set 183 years before the events chronicled in the original trilogy. A sudden attack by Wolf, a clever and ruthless downlanding lord seeking vengeance for the death of his father, forces Helm and his people to make a daring last stand in the ancient stronghold of the Hornburg, a mighty fortress that will later come to be known as Helm's Deep. Finding herself in an increasingly desperate situation, Hera, daughter of Helm, must summon the will to lead the resistance against a deadly enemy intent on their total destruction. V, when you see this description, what's the first impression you have? So we are getting this very interesting look into the history of Rohan, one of the key points in its history. What does this story promise to you? What do you expect from the movie?
I mean, I expect like to see a beginning of a great thing, basically, and like it will be the beginning for the Helm's Deep eventually. So we will have to see how the situation escalates and how they eventually build it from the like I don't know the start,
Yeah.
if it's something already there, and like the deadly enemy. I assume there will be like the landing.
The landings, yeah.
The landings, yeah.
Yeah.
Although there are orcs
The
in the
landings,
movie, so
sorry.
who knows?
Oh,
Yeah.
I mean, it will be interesting to see if the orcs and the Dunlandic somehow interact with each other, or if like
Yeah, I have no idea.
basically date back. And yeah, and it will be also interesting to see like the relationship between the characters, like Helm and Hera,
Oh.
how like a family basically handles all that, and especially our rulings. I think, as I was saying in previous when we were discussing it together, like we haven't really seen interactions between the families and how ruling can affect like the expectations that a father has to his daughter and what you have to do for the kingdom and stuff like that. We sort of had it in Rohan with Theoden and Eowyn, but
Eowyn.
it wasn't exactly like father-daughter. It was only out of
Surrogate father,
necessity,
yeah.
really. Yeah, it was out of necessity, basically. So it will be fun to watch and to expand in relations in Middle Earth that we haven't really seen before. And Pride, I don't know, like,
Yeah.
I think that I will close here. I don't have any more thoughts on that.
Yeah. So, Varking, what do you, how do you see this potential relationship between Helm and the weight that all of these events will put on his daughter Hera's shoulders? And maybe do you see a comparison with some other? We didn't have this specifically, like a father and the daughter relationship in the movies, though Theoden and Eowyn kind of have that surrogate father-daughter relationship. But do you see maybe this being like, can you compare maybe to some other relationship in the movies, perhaps, or in the show, or how do you see this family drama element here?
Well, for one, as Nikki was talking about earlier, I feel like in my heart that Lord of the Rings and Tolkien itself lends itself well to anime, and I picture it in my head with a lot, and maybe that's just because I grew up watching like Full Metal Alchemist and Dragon Ball Z and all that type of stuff on Cartoon Network late at night. So even when the movies came out, I always thought to myself, like, man, it'd be really cool to see somebody's take on this using like modern anime techniques and just give us, and the story itself of Helm Hammerhand kind of walking around being able to just pummel people with one punch. There's an actual anime called One Punch Man, and like it's similar to that. And I don't know if that plays out well in like a live action adaptation, but it makes sense in the world of anime. And Lord of the Rings has a lot of stories where there's an elf taking on an 80-foot tall creature that it would look great in anime and it would feel a little bit weird in live action.
Yeah.
So I appreciate the direction that this is going in, and everybody talking about kind of the scope of this film being kind of the biggest thing that they've ever worked on across the board. Like it's a massive undertaking, especially with the kind of fandom that Lord of the Rings falls under. As far as the relationship with Helm and his daughter, I don't really know who I could compare it to from like the previous movies or the show off the top of my head. But I expect to see a lot of like Brian Cox as Helm early, and then it's sort of to just transition to other characters. Like I don't know how big of a role or how long the role will last inside of the film itself. And I think maybe this will kind of... There's a quote that you were getting to in the article where Philippa Boyens says that this movie tells a story that is very human and political struggle. She went on to say that the film is not about the ring. It's not about the Dark Lord. All of that is very peripheral to the story. Having a Lord of the Rings story on screen that isn't focused on the ring itself or getting it back or destroying it is going to be a pretty cool take for us to see. And
It's
it's like you were saying, seeing like the beginnings of something here is exciting. And I think Hen was talking about there being orcs in here potentially.
A little bit, yeah.
And we're saying we're not
Philippa
really
said
sure.
it in an interview. Yeah.
Well, before
But
Helm
no,
goes and
I
does
don't
his
think
thing.
as agents of Sauron though. They're just in the White Mountains.
Yeah, and I was
you
gonna
know,
say
the Rohirrim
maybe we
go
can
there.
see them peripherally, like she's talking about, where as Helm is going out at night doing his thing and you know leading his own solo attack on different camps. Maybe some of those camps aren't other human characters, but they're orcs, so they're kind of like around, and he's battling them as well.
Yeah. I think
it
the
opens up a
remarks-
lot though. Like it the thing that I like about that is that it's like with everything. It's like with Star Wars as well. Like the whole story is about these Jedis, but we forget that there are so many. Like the universe is massive. The universe that's created, like this world, is massive, and there are people living their lives that have barely even been affected by this at all. Like this whole story, like they only noticed that it was getting a little bit darker, a little bit colder, and there are people having other struggles, and there are orcs that aren't just servants of the ring, like that aren't just they are, but they're doing other things as well. Like they're raiding, they're killing people for no reason,
especially in this
like
time.
so it opens up a lot of possibilities also for stories in the future to be Middle Earth focused, but not just following the ring, which is interesting. We do want to stick to the canon as much as we can, but I like knowing that there are other things happening as well. Like just like in the real world, like there are so many people that your life will never touch them and their life will never touch yours, but they still have their own life, their whole universe, millions of like people that they touch, like metaphorically speaking,
Yeah.
But yeah, I just realized that sounded really bad, but I mean like in theory.
Yeah, we got you.
Yeah.
I think one really cool quote here that also fits very well with that is so it says, for Helm, there's madness born of grief from the loss of the child. With Wolf, there's his relationship with his father and with Hera. So she also said that this story will be the examination of honor, revenge, and familial ties on both sides. So this story will be pretty unique because we will actually see, at least that's the implication here, a story from both sides. So
I hope so.
V, how do you see this? So yeah, like getting the villain of the story in this case, like maybe they won't even be that villainous because it's kind of understandable for Wolf.
Oh, totally.
You maybe want revenge and so on. So how do you see this, like having both sides, and maybe we'll be able to relate to both of those sides? How do you feel about that, having the Lord of the Rings story in such a way?
I kind of love those kind of stories where they show another POV as well, and then you're frustrated, like, no, this is a misunderstanding. You don't understand. You have to change your action. yeah, that kind of thing is something that I really like, although like seems painful. But like I expect to be some conflict, like you won't be able to, at least what I want to like to really take a stand with either of them. Like I don't think, because it's a human story, and human stories don't have exactly black and white when there you have a hero and a villain. To me, it's more. It has to be more gray, and like as I saw Tolkien, you have some black and white stuff, and then you go to Silmarillion, for example, and everything is gray. You can't really take a stand, unless in some very specific situations. So I really want them to take it that way and not like pinpoint someone explicitly as the bad guy, and maybe try to give leverage
I
and
agree. Yeah.
reasons to sympathize with the one that's supposed to be the bad guy. So I hope they get down to that route, because that's probably more adult kind of anime, so like
Yeah.
animation stuff, and then yeah,
Mm.
and it makes the story more complicated and more interesting, in my opinion. So I think it will be a good thing.
Yeah, and also really
I
cool that. Okay, Henny, you can say what you want.
I'm just. This is the first really. This is the first story here where the main villain, where there's a really major villain who's a human, right? Like we had Grima, but
Yep.
he's, kind of a henchman in a way, or
Yeah,
a
he's not
secondary
the-
antagonist. And I guess the Master of Lake Town you could say as well, but it's the same, they're very secondary antagonists. This is the first major antagonist in any of these stories that's a person.
Yeah, because usually in the Hobbit movies they were just all elves.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I
what
was gonna say. So the story will include also the historical grievances of the Dunlandings that the lords of Gondor gave what the Dunlandings felt was their land to the Rohirrim. So speaking of historical grievances, if anyone knows anything about that, it's the dwarves. They've had their grievances against some other people in the past.
Rightfully
so. Yeah, Varking, do you want to maybe read this quote of Boyens and then just comment on maybe all of that, and like the fact that we're seeing the landings and maybe this history between the Rohirrim and them as well?
And maybe Gondor.
Yeah, obviously, everybody will be excited to see like the makings of Gondor. Boyens goes on to tease a key moment in the movie, saying, "And there's a moment in the film which is incredibly gut-wrenching and powerful, where Wolf commits himself to a course of action he cannot turn away from. And once he does that, the story darkens." And I, personally, I love me a lighter, fluffier, hearty, wholesome story. But I also do enjoy me a little bit of a dark twist and things not going so well, and being able to see trials and tribulations and struggles of some of the main characters and cast. And, Game of Thrones made me sort of enjoy seeing a character I was attached to die. And while it sucks to lose them, that moment sticks with you, and it's something that people talked about at the water coolers at work week after week after week, and it makes you mad even more at the villain who does the damage, who does the deed to the character that you enjoy. And depending on what this is that we're talking about here, this action that Wolf commits
Yeah, it's
himself
very
to,
cryptic.
is he killing somebody close to Hera and Helm? Does he have to turn on his own people? Like you said, it's cryptic. We don't know exactly what it is, but it's like, there's like these storytellers who, when they're about to wrap up a story, they just drop something at the end and walk away, and it makes you go, "Damn it! I wish I had more information." That's exactly what Boyens is doing here. She's being a great storyteller, because all it does is make me more interested in the film and wanting to know what's going on here. And I'm not somebody who would have been excited for seeing really anything with like Wolf in it. Now I'm like, I need to know what's going on with Wolf here. And I appreciate when you give us sort of, like you guys were saying, with the villain side, giving us their side of it kind of helps you understand and relate a little bit better. Hopefully
Yeah.
it'll have a bigger impact.
Yeah, there's nothing more boring than villains who are just flat. They're just there to be evil. They're just there. There's no, you don't see what drives them. You don't see their moment of redemption. You don't see any of that. You just see them being evil or them trying to get what they want.
Indeed, and I think it's also really cool that we will have. So in the movies, we have uh, 2, 3 scenes, maybe like 2.5 short scenes. So we have the leader of the nameless leader of the land is swearing fealty to Saruman. We have Saruman giving them an inspirational speech, and then we see them attack the village in the Two Towers.
In the Westfold,
And
yeah.
in the Westfold, yeah, and that's basically it. And this movie gives us the chance. So this movie has the chance to retroactively make those few short scenes way better, because here
Yeah.
we will see this nation of Dal Landings, and why they feel such a grief against against Rohan and against Gondor, because what
Yes.
happens is that the land that Rohan is at is the land that the land is field belong to them, and then the Gondorian steward, a couple centuries before this movie, gave this land to the Rohirrim, and then that's how Rohan was founded. And we will see the root of this struggle between two nations in this movie, and I think it's going to be really cool that we will.
Yeah. And
It's
hopefully
cool.
get to see Dunland.
Yeah, and it's also really cool when you have like a prequel or sorts that actually contributes to the original work, because ever so
Yeah,
often,
informs it. Yeah.
especially like in the last decade or so, we get prequels who just add something, over explain it. Just that was we don't need to know how every single item a legacy character in this really cool franchise has. We don't have to know how they got them, but that's what we've seen from Disney, for example, in Han Solo movie.
Oh yeah.
Or yeah. But on the other hand, we have Rogue One, who, if we just cut the Darth Vader cameo at the end and Leia's cameo at the end, that movie just made the universe better. It just showed us struggles and sufferings of this group of characters for this greater cause, without telling us, oh, this is how this character, they didn't try to like make 5 spin-offs set up in that one movie. So I'm hoping that we get this here.
Yeah, sorta.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But another interesting element to this movie, so Philippa goes on, she explained that the movie will be both epic and claustrophobic. So yes, it begins with these quite large-scale battles, but it actually becomes more intense and claustrophobic, and then revealed that the nature of the film changes almost into a ghost story. She said, as the siege takes
Very
hold,
cryptic.
as the rumors of horror begin to spread, and I can give you a little tease and let you know that, although we said that this isn't about the ring and this isn't about the Dark Lord, there are the White Mountains and there are creatures out there.
Yeah, that's
And
what I was saying, orcs, yeah.
yeah,
You would think, by the way, just from that quote, that they would be the the White Walkers, the dead men of Dun Harrow, right? But no, Demosthenes asked her in this interview, and she said no, they're orcs. It's very interesting. As with the previous quote, she's being a little bit cryptic. I have no idea what she talks about in terms of it becoming a ghost story exactly. But I do think this isn't being about the ring or about the Dark Lord, and this is something that Philippa also said at NSC itself again. So it's she reinforced it. I mean, it's interesting. It's really the only story in the Tolkien kind of Middle Earth oeuvre where the Dark Lord isn't the antagonist in some sense. Because even the trials and tribulations of Gondor with the Easterlings and the Corsairs, Tolkien usually suggests that servants of Sauron sort of push the situation, like the Wainwriters and that sort of stuff. He says, like servants of Sauron drove them to do this or that, and certainly that's the case with Angmar. That's not the case here, and your instinct would be for the kind of the antagonist, the mastermind, to be the same across all entries in the series. That makes sense in a way, but if it's just one film, we can take it. It's a little bit like like they have an entremet at a a little palate cleanser.
Yeah, refreshing take on Middle Earth.
Yeah.
So
it's just interesting.
yeah, okay. Nikki, the concept of a ghost story in Middle Earth. How cool does this sound? How do you feel about that?
I mean, it's safe to assume that even in a fantastical world such as Middle Earth, there will be creatures we don't know much about. Like humans might not know everything about every single creature that exists in Middle Earth, So there could be like I like that idea, and I like that it makes Middle Earth more real because these people believe in lore. They believe in ghosts. They believe in they have stories about river monsters and people getting kidnapped into the woods by the witch. Like they would have stories like that too because that's what people are like. Like we invent stuff to sort of explain our own fears, and sometimes the the stories that we invent aren't too far away from the truth. So maybe there's some sort of creature that gets in and starts killing people. Maybe the enemy has control of something that they're using. Maybe there's a way that it turns into that. Um, or it's kind of like, fear can do twisted things to people. So maybe someone uh, gets a little more twisted than they're supposed to inside those walls, and it turns dark on both sides. I don't know. It sounds interesting. I'm a big fan of horror, so the more horrible you can get it, the better it is for me. But I don't know. Just
Yeah, we'll have to
don't.
wait and see.
Yeah, just don't. I would hate for them to invent something that isn't Tolkien-esque, but I don't think they will. I think they will just
Yeah.
use what they have because there's so much in that lore. It's so rich.
There are
And I'd love
orcs
to
in
see
the
it.
White. Yeah, the orcs are in the White Mountains at this time, so it does make sense.
Hmm.
Tolkien
Does it
wise.
necessarily need to be those other creatures that make this the ghost story, or is
No,
maybe
I
the
don't think
ghost
so.
story being told about Helm and how
Yeah.
people once his end? I don't want to
Hmm.
spoil it for people who don't know,
Yeah, I
but
like
when
that
he's
as
at
well.
the end, is it the stories we hear from other people about why they don't want to approach or come around because they are worried about like Helm being able to do something to them? I think
I think that's a strong possibility. Yes,
it's just a
that's what
really
he
Yeah.
cool
means.
quote
I
that
just don't
lets
know.
you ponder a lot.
Yeah.
But also, I think it's worth mentioning that Harrow, which is that big camp
Yeah. Also
from
in
the
the
Return of the
story.
King movie, and it is a part of this story, or it should be.
Yes.
It's basically on the doorstep of the paths of the dead. Now we will, for the people of Rohan, the paths of the dead are a horrifying ghost story. Exactly that. They do not go there. There's one person at one point who goes there sometime in the history of
Baldor, I
Rohan.
think. Yeah.
Yeah, but they will be there, and I'm wondering like, will we maybe get some hints? Just like put it somewhere in the
Maybe.
background.
Yeah.
Maybe give like a
That'd be
slight
cool.
hint or something.
That'd be cool. Yeah. I hope. And
Yeah,
of course we have the same questions with Gondor because Gondor, like Don Harrow, and Don Harrow is essential to the story because that's where what's his name? Frealaf makes his stand.
yeah.
He goes to Don Harrow. So there's that. And also much the same is true of Gondor because Gondor is important to the story. Do we see it? You know what I'm saying? Because it's in a war with the Corsairs at the same time. Who knows? There's a lot yet left to be seen of this.
Indeed, and actually, we haven't touched on a really cool part of this article. V, what do you think of this artwork here? So the one that's like the head of the article, basically, it looks really cool. What do you think of this? It's like a Mumakil in Rohan.
Yeah, I mean, supposedly the elephants is, I think we associate them with the Easterlings when they come to battle in Gondor.
Yes.
And like it's very interesting to see like if we will see the Easterlings coming to help either
They do in the
side.
book.
They do? Okay.
Yes.
I don't remember. Like
It's mentioned in like a word. It's very easy to miss, but it's there.
Yeah, it's like one sentence.
That's interesting.
Basically.
So I mean, it's fun to see that even different tribes of humans have their own alliances, and like there is such a separated society from the rest of Middle Earth that probably like the elves and the dwarves probably didn't care about those small like conflicts they had among them and different kingdoms like that they fought with each other and with different like tribes and stuff like that. So it's really interesting to see something so outside of the common alliances in Middle Earth and the common communities that we have seen in the past. And I wonder like how the lore of the ghost story and the myth or how it depends how they will choose to go with it, how it will build amongst the different alliances and if it will have an effect on that. Like we're not coming to help you with because like we know that there's something dark there in the mountains that we don't want to mess with. Um, and yeah, I guess we will have to wait and see. And like, I wanted to add in when we were discussing the ghosts that it really brings that horror element that we had in the books with in the first book, the Fellowship, when the hobbits leave and they go to the old forest and they meet and they meet the wraiths there. I won't call them vampires again. And it's really interesting because that's the only other point that we ever have kind of ghosts from the dead that aren't connected to the ghosts that we know from the oath. They are just there. And they are inside the lore of hobbits, and the hobbits know that something bad exists in the forest, but they don't know exactly. And then we get what this is. So I don't know how they will choose to play it, but I think they can take from that chapter and like draw ideas on what kind of ghost will they have.
Yeah, I think Nikki made a really good point early on that these types. So if we see the regular inhabitants of Middle Earth and we see things that they believe in, things that like maybe superstitions or having like this horror tales of their own, it really gives this like extra layer of like depth to the whole thing.
Especially since you figure at this time, maybe they haven't seen orcs in a long time. Maybe it's a little bit like the setup in the Rings of Power, because of course this is before, not a long time before actually, the War of the Orcs and the Dwarves. So maybe the orcs have been kind of laying low for a while.
Indeed. Yeah, I think this article is giving us a lot of promise for the movie. Would anybody like to share any final thoughts, maybe? Or I think we basically covered the whole article.
You can see just a final thought on this piece of artwork. You can see what looks like the Dunlendings here. They look cool. I think they kind of photoshopped orcs, but put kind of drew over them. But still, they have that shield certainly isn't something I've seen before.
Yeah,
that's cool.
All right, Varking, your final thoughts for today, sir.
I just watched a documentary on Disney about Disney building like Disneyland and Disney World, and what we're looking at in this image is
video sponsored by.
So it's a little trick called forced perspective, and it's bait. And that army is about to attack that building in the back, and it's probably super super small, but you build everything at the ground super big, so it looks much bigger up there. That's what I just learned from watching that Disney thing. That's all I got.
Oh, okay.
Fair enough.
It's bait, and then Helm's gonna come out and one punch that Mumakil right in the chest.
Indeed. I mean, honestly, I would close one eye and I would just enjoy that. Just the fact that Helm just knocked one punch the Muma kill. Nikki, what are your final thoughts on this article and all the cool stuff we learned today?
Just I'm excited about this. If anyone has been following Fellowship of Fans for a while, they know I'm excited about everything. But I'm really excited about this one because I think it's something different. And
Yes.
I was thinking about what I wanted to say, and I was like, I wanted to say I really hope they make this into something that really hits people, like you feel,
Mm-hmm.
because sometimes it's hard to get into cartoons and drawn stuff because you want to see real feelings, you want to see like live action breathing people. But then I was like, man, every single anime series I've ever seen, I've been so heavily involved and tearing up and getting angry and frustrated watching. So I don't think it'll be a problem. I'm not worried.
All right. Well, hopefully it is exactly like that. I mean, honestly, I myself have no doubts. It sounds really cool. V, closing thoughts.
I mean, I will have to agree with Nikki. I'm excited to see something fresh in Middle Earth, and I don't know, maybe it will get me more in anime and towards different things as well. And it will be quite interesting to see an animated film in the big screen after many, many years, because I think the last one where some childish kind of movie probably long, long time ago. So I'm definitely excited, and the more we read and discuss with it, the more excited I get because built a really good dialogue here around this movie, and it's really nice to have that. And probably a good thing that they pushed it back. We will get to do more Warhirrim Wednesdays for a longer time. So yeah.
Fair
Yeah.
enough. True words. Hen, any final comments from you?
Um. Yeah, I'm just curious. I think this is so different, and that makes it interesting because it's different. It's a story about people. It's a one-off. It's animated. It was at least originally going to be released in a different time of year. The whole dynamic is different. It's not an adventure story in any way. Um, it's just very, very intriguing. I want to see what it's like and how it fits and how it works. That's
I'd
it.
like to
That's it.
say it would be really cool based on the time of year that it's launching. It's probably going to be some snowy scenery in the
Oh
film
yeah, it's in
itself.
winter. Yeah, you're right. You're
If
absolutely
they
right.
could time that, I know you can't predict these things, but if it were like snowy outside and you enter the
Mhm.
theater and then you watch this movie and you come out and there's snow all over the ground, like it would just kind of help set that mood. And I think, as Nikki would say, it would help hit with
That's a
people
good
a
point.
little more. I make good points all the time, man.
Yeah. The movie is set. The story is wintertime, and there's a shot,
Hmm.
there's
Or,
artwork
or, at, or
of
at least
Helm.
the key part of the movie will be.
Yes, yes, yes. And there's a shot of Helm, a piece of artwork of him,
Yeah.
just everything around his eyes. You can see the Holmberg behind very clearly, but it's covered in ice, and all the bodies beneath him are frozen. Yeah, I didn't think of that. That's cool.
Yeah, maybe this delay will end up being a great marketing move, even if unintentional. Unintentional. All right. Well, that's it. I think we did a really cool job with this article. We'll also link it in the description so you can check it out for yourself. Nikki, thank you for joining us.
As always, thank you for having me.
V, always a pleasure.
Fun to be here for you.
Hen, thank you very much for all the cool, as
Oh,
usual, behind the
yeah,
scenes
yeah.
explanations and
Yeah,
everything
thank you.
with
It's
the
fun. I
techniques and
like
all that.
doing this.
All right, we got a bigger goodbye sentence from Hen. That means it was a really good episode. And Marking, thank you very much for doing all the background technical stuff with recording of the video and all that. Much appreciated. And as always, thank you for all your
It's
awesome comments and making good points.
It's fun to do stuff like this. It's fun to edit, and it's always a pleasure to hang out with you guys. And As a great dwarf once said, we don't say goodbye, we say Namarie.